Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Save Plan webinar. We thank you for making time out of your day to be here today. So, because we do have a lot of content to cover, we're going to go ahead and get started. And being mindful that the content shared today is relevant to today's date of October 28, 2025. So, who we are. SDCC is a national advocacy organization with 2 million supporters calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and to the end of the student debt crisis. So, you may have joined here from seeing our mailing list or have gotten the link through our socials. And again, we thank you for joining us today. A special thank you to our funders. The research was funded by the NEE Casey Foundation, and we thank them for their support. However, the findings and conclusions presented in this report are those of the authors alone and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the foundation. Some quick reminders. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function on Zoom, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. And any information shared on today's clinic pertains to the current guidelines and rules. As I mentioned earlier, this information is relevant as of today's date, October 28th, 2025. And a recording will be provided to anyone who registered for this workshop via email within 24 hours. So if you have any questions throughout the entire webinar, please send them through the Q&A function, and we'll go ahead and answer as many as we can throughout the workshop. All right, so what will we cover? We're going to go ahead and start with what is SAVE and what is happening to it. We know there's a lot of questions surrounding that. Also, another topic we're going to cover is should I stay in SAVE or should I get out? And what plans are available aside from SAVE. And we will also have a Q&A at the end in which we'll answer questions that will be sent through the Q&A feature. One thing to highlight is that we are not financial counselors or attorneys. We are advocates and experts here to help. We cannot provide legal or financial advice, and the information provided today is relevant to today's date. Okay, so let's kick things off really quickly with how to identify your current repayment plan. So one thing you're going to go ahead and do in order to figure out what repayment plan you're in is go to www.studentaid.gov. And here you'll be able to access all information pertaining to your student loans. You'll be also be able to answer any questions you have about federal loans or the programs available to you. And if you have trouble logging in, you can call the number on the screen and as well access um, the password recovery on that link right there. One thing to highlight is to please directly type that URL into your browser, as if there's a lot of scams out there and a lot of people take advantage of vulnerable folks. So please go ahead and type it in directly into your browser. When you log in, you will see this dashboard. So you can see this borrower has a total of $28,356 in loans, and their servicer is Mohila. And then when you click on the view details section in view details button in the My Aid section, it will take you to this next page. Here you will see that they have 11 loans and there is an option to view a detailed breakdown of their loans. So when you click on view breakdown, you go ahead and go onto this next page in which you will see how each loan is serviced by that particular servicer. So the first one is serviced by the Department of Education and Mohila, the total loan balance, and also a link to pay on their servicer website. And then you see the bottom one as well is serviced by Arcadia University and has a balance of $0, and there's no payment due for that next one. So when you click on view loans, you can see more information on this next page. And you see here that the repayment plan this person is in is the Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, or SAVE, and their loan status is in forbearance. So if you go ahead and log on, you'll be able to see what repayment plan you're in once you reach this page, alongside the interest rate, total balance, and the status of your loan. And now I'll go ahead and pass it on to my colleague, Sabrina Calazans, to kick us off with information about the SAVE plan.
Thanks, Angel, and thank you all for joining us and asking your questions. Let's jump right into what's happening with the SAVE Plan and exactly what the SAVE Plan is. So, just a quick recap, the SAVE Plan is the Saving on a Valuable Education Plan. It is an income-driven repayment plan that was created by the Biden administration. I did see a couple of questions in the Q&A, and folks have been saying, I'm in SAVE and IDR. SAVE is a type of IDR plan. So just keep that in mind when folks are talking about all of these different acronyms tonight. So SAVE is a kind of IDR plan. Anyone who is previously enrolled in the repay plan was placed into SAVE. So if previously you were in that plan, you did not have to apply for SAVE, you were automatically placed into it. And repay has since been phased out. There were nearly 8 million Americans enrolled in the SAFE plan. We don't currently have the numbers on there. We know that several folks have left the SAFE plan since all of the litigation, but there are still millions more currently enrolled in the plan. Now, what is happening with all of the lawsuits, with SAVE, and the impacts on borrowers? So, SAVE is being sued. There is yet a final ruling to be made when it comes to the lawsuits against the SAVE plan. It's kind of been at a standstill right now. So, what does that mean? It means that no one can enroll in the SAVE plan. And also, once you leave the SAVE plan, you cannot access it again. So, if you applied for IBR and then you change your mind, you can't go back to SAVE. You no longer able to access it. Now, all borrowers that are still enrolled in SAVE to this day have been placed into an administrative SAVE forbearance. That means that you do not have a payment required. The government put everyone enrolled in SAVE into this forbearance. It wasn't something that you had to apply for. Now, a big change that happened with SAVE this year is that interest began accruing on August 1st for anyone enrolled in SAVE. Prior to August 1st, it was an interest-free forbearance, and now that is no longer the case. So if you're seeing interest, tick up on your account, your balance grow a little bit, it is because of that. And it's really important to note that time in the SAVE forbearance does not count towards public service loan forgiveness progress or IDR cancellation. Now, folks can take advantage of the PSLF buyback program to buy back the time spent in the SAVE forbearance to count towards PSLF. One of the questions here in the Q&A was, how do they determine that amount? So essentially through the PSLF buyback program, they estimate what your monthly payment is on SAVE, and determined by how many months you want to pay back or buy back, they will then have their formula and they would send you the amount that you would need to buy back. Now, on the next slide here, another big development that's happened just recently is that the AFT, or the American Federation of Teachers, is suing the Department of Education. So just recently, a settlement was actually reached among the two groups. So what was the result of the settlement? So all borrowers that are eligible for IDR forgiveness by December 31st of this year, 2025, they will have their loans discharged tax-free. So what does that mean? That means that if you've been in repayment for 20 to 25 years and you reach that mark that by the end of this year, your loans are eligible to be discharged tax-free. And that means that even if your loans are not discharged by December 31st of this year. So let's say because we're in the government shutdown, we know that things are slow. If the department resumes processing, but your loans are not discharged until January 2026, you are still going to be exempt from taxes, which is a really huge win here for borrowers. And again, this only applies if you are eligible for IDR forgiveness by the end of this year. If unfortunately you qualify for forgiveness beginning next year, you will still be subject to a tax liability. Now, some other key pieces here of the settlement are that a cancellation of student debt for all eligible borrowers applies to folks enrolled in IBR, the income-based repayment plan, ICR, the income contingent repayment plan, or pay as you earn, as well as folks in the PSLF program. Now, if you've been following along closely, you might have seen that with the SAVE litigation, it essentially paused IDR forgiveness for anyone who's not currently enrolled in the income-based repayment plan. So for folks enrolled in ICR and Pay, previously you had to switch out of those plans and get into the income-based repayment plan in order to have your loans forgiven. However, the settlement reached allows folks to remain in the Pay and ICR plans and have their loans discharged due to the settlement, which is another really important piece here. Now, one thing for you to be very aware of, especially as many folks here tonight are enrolled in the SAVE plan, is that if you are an eligible borrower, meaning you have that 20 to 25-year mark, but you are currently enrolled in SAVE, you will need to switch to another income-driven repayment plan. That is a guarantee. That's something that we can say with certainty because SAVE, again, is tied up in that litigation and it does not allow for any loan discharge. So if that's you and you're certain that you have the 20 to 25 years worth of IDR credits, you should consider looking into another income-driven repayment plan. And if you are not certain that you are at that mark, but you might be very close to it, our recommendation is that you call your student loan servicer and ask them to clarify how many credits you have so that you know, okay, I'm at that mark, I can safely switch out of SAVE into another repayment plan with the anticipation that I'm going to have my loans forgiven through this discharge. Now, that's really important for folks to keep in mind. Some other things here are that the department and AFT came to the agreement that the department will provide refunds for overpayment beyond the date of eligibility for cancellation through IDR. So if you became eligible for IDR forgiveness in January of this year, but you've been paying up until this point and your loans are forgiven tomorrow, you would be owed a refund for all of the payments that you made between January and now. So for many folks, that'll be months of payments you'll be refunded. And then also a key piece here is that the department will be processing IDR and PSLF buyback applications, including applications for the IDR plan from borrowers without a partial financial hardship. So what does that mean? For the buyback program, there's about 70,000 applications that are currently backlogged. The department has agreed to expedite processing of that. Again, all of this is in combination with a government shutdown. So again, we don't know how quickly that will be, but it's something that the department is court ordered to do. And so we hope to see that pick up in the near future. And then when it comes to the applications, and we'll talk about IBR shortly and about partial financial hardship, but if folks previously didn't qualify for IBR because of this partial financial hardship, the application will be processed and allow you to enroll in the plan. So these are, again, a lot of updates here, but the good news is that people who have been in this sort of limbo, but have been at the threshold for IDR forgiveness are going to see that move forward and hopefully tax free, especially between now and the end of this year. So keep that in mind. All right. And then the truth about the SAFE plan. I think the biggest question that we get as an organization is the SAFE plan going away? And the answer to that is yes. The only thing that changes is how it's going to go away. So, due to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, SAVE is set to phase out by July 1st, 2028 at the latest. That's the latest point in which they can phase out the SAVE plan. And so, we are encouraging everyone who is enrolled in SAVE to look into your other repayment plan options and plan accordingly, just so that you're not caught off guard or taken by surprise, especially because a lot of folks can anticipate their payments increasing when switching from SAVE to another repayment plan. So definitely keep that in mind. Um, we will talk about ways that folks can figure out what their monthly payment will look like, but if someone from my team can drop the link to the EdCap tool, that would be great. This is a tool that folks can use that's fairly simple, and it will essentially give you an estimated payment across all of the existing income-driven repayment plan options. So that is something that I recommend folks go through. Now, the fate of SAVE could also be decided in the courts prior to 2028. So again, borrowers should be assessing their options as soon as they can. So again, look for what repayment plans you qualify for and the estimated monthly payment amounts on those plans. Next slide. Again, one of the biggest questions, should I get out of SAVE and apply for another income-driven repayment plan? So let's talk through what you might want to consider here. So you may consider getting out of the SAVE plan if you want to re-enter repayment to receive public service loan forgiveness credits. If you're super close to public service loan forgiveness, the 120 credits, this may be a good thing to consider. If you want to re-enter repayment to receive IDR credits, getting out of SAFE could be a good option. If you are close, especially to the forgiveness, again, if you've reached 240 or 300 IDR credits, um, keep that in mind. Right now, you don't need to switch out of pay in ICR, but if you are in SAVE, you will need to switch out of it. Now, you may want consider sticking with the SAVE plan if you don't mind not receiving the PSLF or IDR credits. If you're not super close to it, if you would benefit from not having to make a payment, we know that a lot of folks are dealing with high cost of living, you know, inflation, folks are struggling financially. If that's you, it is absolutely okay to stick in the SAVE plan. And again, if you don't mind the interest accrual, that's also not a problem. If it suits you to stick with the plan, stick with it. If it makes sense for you to get out and you're able to afford the monthly payment on another plan, consider that option as well. It is a super personal decision. There's no right or wrong answer here. It is an individual case by case basis. Now, we have some examples here for folks in terms of navigating and making those decisions. So we have a couple of examples that I want to walk through really quick. So we're looking at Amy here. She makes $80,000 a year as a city planner. She's working towards public service loan forgiveness and is almost at 120 credits. She has certified her employment every month until the beginning of the SAVE forbearance. So she's current in terms of her PSLF credits. So if we look at her here, Amy has a direct loan in SAVE. Her loan balance is 100,000 and she has 115 public service loan forgiveness credits. And because she's in the SAVE forbearance, her monthly payment is zero. She does not have a payment required. Now, if Amy decides to leave SAVE and enroll in the new IBR plan, she will remain at 115 credits, but with each month that she makes a payment, that will increase. So after 5 months of payments, she will reach the 120 credits and be eligible for loan forgiveness. So in Amy's case, since she is close to the 120, it makes sense for her to switch into another repayment plan and make that progress towards public service loan forgiveness so that hopefully within the next few months, she would certify that she has 120 and have her loans discharged. So this is just one example for folks who are in PSLF and might consider switching out of SAVE. Now, if we look at the next example here, this is an example of Jack. So Jack's income is 85,000. He is married with 2 kids. His spouse is a stay-at-home parent. His estimated monthly payment on other IDR plans start at $300. Now, since Jack is not close to IDR forgiveness, if we look here at Jack's situation, he has a direct unsubsidized loan with a loan balance of 50,000. He is married filing jointly, and he only has 60 IDR credits, which is 5 years worth of IDR payments out of the necessary 240, right? So he still has a long way to go here. So since he's not close to IDR forgiveness, Jack may want to consider saving some money and sticking around and save. If that's what suits him and his family, that's absolutely okay because he still has 15 years to go in terms of progress towards IDR forgiveness. So in Jack's situation, given that he has a lot of time, it makes sense for him to save some money and stick around with SAVE. Again, these are just some scenarios for folks to envision of whether or not it makes sense for you to stay in SAVE or to get out of it. All right. Let's talk about these very basic student loan repayment options, and then I'm going to toss it over to my colleague for the other options. So let's take a look at the repayment plans that are available to folks with federal student loans. So when folks first enter repayment, what happens is you're placed into the standard plan, which if you go to your servicer website like Mohila or Advantage, sometimes it's listed as the level plan. Now, it all starts off with standard. However, there are two other options as well. There are these fixed alternative plans, which we tend to call them alternative, but they are referred to as fixed plans, which are the graduated repayment, the extended repayment, and the extended graduated repayment plans, which we'll get into just a minute. And then there are income-driven repayment plans, which is ICR, income contingent repayment, IBR, income-based repayment. There's an old and a new version. There's pay, which is pay as you earn, and then there's save. Again, not everyone, not everyone is eligible for the income-based repayment plan, although there are changes coming. And the same thing applies to the pay plan. And again, not everyone is eligible or, able to enroll in the SAFE plan. The SAFE plan is closed for enrollment. No one can enroll in that plan. Now, if we look at the next slide here, we'll talk about the different versions of the standard plan and then jump into the alternatives. So it starts off with a 10-year standard plan. The goal of the standard plan is that you are paying the entire balance of your loan. There's no forgiveness aspect associated with the standard plan. So these payments are going to be in the 10-year standard over a 10-year term with fixed monthly payments. The payments will not change. They're fixed. This plan specifically is available to folks who have unconsolidated loans or consolidated loans, but with a balance less than $7,500. But we also understand that if you have a high low bal a high high loan balance, it could be unaffordable. So there are more affordable options for folks who are struggling, like the income-driven repayment plans. But if you're exploring your repayment plan options, you may want to consider this 10-year standard plan if you want to make a dent in your debt, if you are worried about interest accrual, or if you want to get out of the system more quickly than a 20 to 25-year income-driven repayment plan term. Now, there's another version of the standard plan, which is the between 10 and 30 years, and that tends to be for consolidated loans. So again, there's no forgiveness aspect to this plan. It's fixed monthly payments. If you have consolidated loans, your repayment period will be up to 30 years, but it's ultimately based on your loan balance. So if you have a loan balance of, looking at the chart here, between 10,000 and 19,999, that'll be 15 years. But if you have between 20,000 and 39,999, that's 20 years. And then if you have more than 60,000, that'll be a term limit of 30 years. So this is important for folks to keep in mind for the standard plan. And also this does not apply or count towards income-driven repayment forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness. Just keep that in mind, especially if you're working towards either one of those forgiveness programs. Now, taking a look at the fixed alternative plans that we mentioned earlier, there are three options. The first one being extended. All loans are eligible except for Perkins loans, which can be consolidated to become eligible. The payments under the extended plan are fixed, and the repayment timeline is 25 years. And only folks with balances higher than $30,000 are eligible for this plan. So these fixed alternative plans are essentially variations of the standard plan. Again, there's no loan forgiveness here. You are just repaying the entire balance off using these plans. It's just a different pathway. Now, the graduated plan, same thing applies. All loans are eligible except for Perkins loans, which can be consolidated to become eligible. The repayment timeline here depends. So if you have FFEL and direct consolidation loans, it's going to be between 10 to 30 years, which are based on your balance. And then all other loans are going to be a 10-year timeline for graduated. The payments are going to start low and they're going to increase every 2 years. So you might start off paying about $200 on your balance, and by the end of the term, it could be that you're paying about $500. So again, the monthly payments are going to gradually increase over time. Now, the extended graduated repayment plan is a combination of the extended and graduated. So the repayment timeline is going to be 25 years, and the payment amount is going to go up every 2 years. And the same thing as the extended, where only folks with balances higher than 30,000 are eligible for this plan. So if the standard plan doesn't suit you and you also don't want to do an income-driven repayment plan, the fixed alternative plans could be a good option here for you. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to my colleague Sabrina Ashley to go over income-driven repayment plans, especially if folks are considering getting out of SAVE. Sabrina?
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let's go over the benefit of IDR plans to begin with. So basically, monthly payments on income-driven repayment plans are calculated as a percentage of your discretionary income, and it's based on your income and family size, not your loan amount. So that's what makes them a little bit more affordable. Monthly payments can definitely be more affordable than the standard plan for many borrowers. So that's why we always are suggesting that you all look into it. And it can definitely help prevent default and delinquency as well for folks who are struggling to make payments. Um, IDR plans also help folks with lower incomes, those who may have lost a job, or if you have a decreased income. And we'll talk about recertifying your income and how you can secure a $0 payment. So with IDR plans, you have basically two terms of repayment. One is 20 years or 240 credits, and the other is 25 years and 300 credits. And that just depends on which repayment plan that you're in. So when we talk about IDR credits or qualifying payments, those are the numbers that we're thinking about, the 240 and the 300. It's important to note here also that periods of default and many types of forbearances and deferments do not count towards IDR forgiveness, and that is including the SAVE forbearance that folks are in right now. So if you're in the SAVE forbearance, you're not earning any of those credits. And then loan forgiveness is possible after payments are made between 20 and 25 years, depending on your plan. So income recertification, this can be completed by filling out the IDR application either online or via paper form. Right now, income recertification is not required until February 2026 at the earliest. Some people might have received communications from a servicer saying that you don't have to recertify your income until even later. Just follow whatever your servicer is telling you then if you've received that. And basically, when you recertify your income, you're providing updated income and family size information so that your servicer can kind of reassess your monthly payment for the next year. And you must recertify once per year, although we suggest that folks recertify every 11 months because your recertification is actually due 10 days before the 12-month mark. So if you just do it every 11 months, you'll avoid any of those um, kind of tight deadlines. And then you can recertify your income at any time. And that's really important to note. You should recertify your income to secure lower payments if your wages decrease or if you become unemployed. You don't have to have an income to be on an income-driven repayment plan. So if you are experiencing hardship like that, you can definitely recertify your income and secure a $0 payment or a very low dollar payment for the next year. So this bottom screenshot, yep, on this slide, just is what that will look like for folks who are recertifying your income. You're going to want to go to the returning IDR borrowers section of the IDR application so you don't have to go through the entire form again. Okay, so IDR and taxes. This is a really common question that we get. A little bit about tax filing. Married filed jointly. This is where both incomes are taken into consideration. So although if you're now separated or divorced or you can't reasonably access your spouse's current income, the Department of Education won't factor in your spouse's income or loan debt when calculating your IDR payment. If you are married filed separately, this is where your spousal income is not considered. And then this date, December 31st, 2025, is very important right now for folks who are very close to IDR forgiveness. So this is the end of tax-free student loan cancellation via IDR on the federal level unless it is extended by Congress. So this means that if you reach the IDR credit threshold by December 31st, 2025, you should not be taxed. Um, and you just have to reach that threshold. So even if your loans are discharged in 2026, as long as you reached the threshold for your repayment plan for forgiveness by December 31st, 2025, then you should not be taxed. And then one final note here, IRS integration has resumed on IDR applications. If you provide consent, Ed can pull your income information on the online application from last year's tax filing. However, again, you should always manually recertify your income every 11 months. That IRS integration is just an easier piece there to IDR applications. Okay, so touching on what Sabrina was talking about a little bit earlier, we've seen this in the chat a few times, and it is very easy to confuse what all these acronyms are. So we've provided this little visual for you all. So IDR, income driven repayment, is an umbrella term. It's the category and the name of the overall program that you are enrolled in. And then all of these four plans underneath here, so IBR, Pay, ICR, and Save are all types of IDR plans. And then this is the breakdown of these types of IDR plans. So we have Pay, which is pay as you earn, new and old quotes there, income-based repayment or IBR, and then we have income contingent repayment. And you can see that each of these will take a different percentage of your discretionary income, and that's what your payment is based off of. And then each one also has a different repayment timeline. So this is just a breakdown of how the different plans differ. And then a note here is that IBR will soon be offered to those who didn't qualify previously due to hardship requirements. Early implementation of the OBBBA is expected to become available this upcoming winter. So if you have previously not been eligible for income-based repayment, and that's the plan that you want to be on, definitely keep an eye out for when income-based repayment becomes available to all borrowers. Okay, so how to identify monthly payments on different plans. First, you can try the loan simulator, and that is found on studentaid.gov. The con to this is it's not always clear when it's updated or working correctly. So it might show you inaccurate results for plan eligibility and monthly payment amounts. It is a good tool if you're looking at the standard plan. And also, if you don't have time to call your servicer and wait on the phone, because we all know that can be a very interesting situation, then you can also try calling your servicer. They are going to give you more accurate information regarding plan eligibility and what your monthly payment amount would be. The con, of course, is those long wait times. If you do choose this route, you'll want to ask what repayment plans am I eligible for and what are the estimated monthly payments. And this is very important for folks who are working towards PSLF. You'll want to be sure to specify that you want to maintain eligibility for PSLF. So that means that you should be hearing about options that are IDR plans or the 10-year standard plan. And then finally, we don't have it on this slide because it is very new, and we always try to give you all the most accurate and up-to-date information, but that tool that I dropped earlier in the chat is also available there, and that is a pretty accurate. We've seen it work for several people. Perfect. We dropped it one more time. You can go ahead and fill out your loan balance and your loan details and then select the different income-driven repayment plans and see what your monthly payments could be. So what to know before applying for an IDR plan? Well, you'll need to know your permanent and or mailing address, your family size, and then if you don't opt into the IRS integration, you'll need to provide some type of income documentation, and you'll just need to choose one from this list. So whether that's a W-2 or a pay stub or maybe a bank account statement, you'll have to submit that. And then a note here is that you must know what payment plan you want to, or what plan you want to enroll in. So that's where that EdCap tool that's dropped in the chat could come in handy, because the lowest monthly payment option no longer exists on the IDR plan. So you'll need to know which specific plan you want to be in. And then how do you actually apply for an IDR plan? You'll head to studentaid.gov/IDR and you can fill out the online application there. You can also find the paper application on studentaid.gov as well. And a note here, this is a common question we get. If you applied before March 2025, and submitted an application requesting that lowest monthly payment or the save options, your application is still pending, you should consider resubmitting your application, because of all of the backlogs and massive processing delays that have been happening. And then how long does it take to process? It can take anywhere from a few days to a few months to process your application if we are being completely transparent with you all. Although we have seen that applications that opt in to the IRS integration are being processed a lot faster than any of the paper forms, or the income documentation. And after you apply for this new plan, you should be placed into a processing forbearance once you submit your application. And this is during this period, you will not be billed um, while your application is being processed because they are reassessing all of your income and family size information and determining what that new payment will look like for you. If you're not placed into that processing forbearance, definitely call your servicer if you have time to and demand to be placed into one. Um, that is the process, and you have a right to be placed in one. Okay, so IDR credit counts. How to check qualifying payment counts towards various IDR payment plans. Important note before we even get into this is not guaranteed to work for everyone. However, we have again seen it work for several people, and it's a great tool if you can get it to work for you. And we're gonna drop this in the chat so you don't have to struggle to type in this really long URL. So first you're gonna log into studentaid.gov, and you must be logged in for this to work. Then you'll open a second tab and you'll paste this link into that new tab. Then you'll come to a screen with a box at the top that says pretty print to make it easier to read. And on this next slide, we have a screenshot of what this looks like. So you can see that this first screenshot on the left-hand side is horrible. So at the very top it says pretty print and we have it highlighted in that red box. That's where you're going to click to make it easier to read. And it's going to look like the screenshot that we have on the right. And what you want to look for is the type followed by the plan name. And you want to look for qualifying count and then look for forgiveness required payments and forgiveness remaining payments. And a really common question that we get here is I have, say this borrower has this information about IBR underscore 2014 on this screenshot here, but they've never been enrolled in the old IBR plan. Well, that's okay. This is just telling you what your loan is like eligible for if you were to be in that plan. So you might see repayment plans on here that are not necessarily plans that you have been enrolled in. It's just letting you know what where your repayment history and your loan status kind of stands. So hopefully that clears some things up for some folks. So what to do if you are struggling to repay your loans? Unfortunately, many of us cannot afford our payments. So here are a couple of options that you can look at if you've checked all of your IDR eligibility and options and you still can't afford the minimum monthly payments. We have forbearance and deferment here. So the difference between these two is slight. They get kind of blended together frequently, but a forbearance allows you to temporarily stop making monthly payments or temporarily make smaller payments. There's usually no progress towards forgiveness or loan payoff during a forbearance, which we're seeing in the SAVE forbearance that everyone's in right now, if you're enrolled in the SAVE plan. And then during a forbearance, interest accrues here. So you may choose to pay the interest during a forbearance. During a deferment, this allows you to temporarily stop making payments. Interest is going to accrue on some loan types, and um, different types of forbearance or deferment, excuse me, with specific eligibility requirements and forms exist. So you could apply for one of these specific deferment types like cancer treatment, graduate fellowship, maybe military service and post-active duty student deferment. Um, so there are many different types of deferments, and this is what you will need to apply for. A forbearance, you can typically just call your servicer and request to be put in one. There's not really a application that goes with it. So the different types of forbearances explained here. We have hardship or discretionary forbearance. This is typically used when you're struggling to afford your payments. Um, you can apply for this via mail, online, or on the phone with your servicer. Um, and that's what is recommended. This is not an automatic forbearance. And then interest will accrue and time spent in this forbearance will not count towards IDR or PSLF forgiveness. Then we have the SAVE administrative forbearance. This is an involuntary forbearance. There was no application for this, and this applied to all 8 million folks who were enrolled in the SAVE plan. So this was automatically put in place by your servicer. No payments are required during this time, and interest is accruing as of August 1st. And you will not receive PSLF or IDR credits for time spent in this forbearance. And then we have a processing forbearance, which is what happens once you apply for an IDR plan, and we went over that a few minutes ago. So folks who apply for an IDR plan are placed into this until your servicer processes your application. It's supposed to be automatically applied to your account, but it's not always, and you should call your servicer to request to be put into one. It can last up to 60 days. Excuse me, it can last more than 60 days, but up to 60 days of this forbearance will count towards PSLF credits. That's a common question we get. So if your processing forbearance lasts for 90 days, you'll not get all of that credit towards PSLF. You'll only get 60 days worth. And then during a processing forbearance, interest does accrue. Okay, so what happens if you don't make payments? So if you can't afford your payments, you don't apply for a forbearance or a deferment, and you just don't make payments on your loans, this is what can happen. So after one day, you're past due, your payment is now delinquent. And after 90 days past due, the delinquency is reported on your credit. So the loan will remain delinquent until any or those missed payments are made up, or if a deferment or forbearance is granted for the delinquent period. Then, once you reach 270 days past due, the student loan is considered in default. And consequences of default can include tax refunds withheld, wage garnishment, ineligibility for federal assistance. But there are loan rehabilitation or loan consolidation available to get out of default. And then one note here is that federal Perkins loans can be placed into default after 1 day of missed payment. So it's definitely a serious situation to be in. So how would you know if your loans are in default? When you log into studentaid.gov, you'll definitely get this banner here on your dashboard in red at the top. So this person has 3 loans in default, and then it gives a little message there. Okay, so how to get your loans out of default. There's loan rehabilitation, and this is where you make 9 on-time monthly payments over the course of 10 months. This requires you to work with your servicer to determine an affordable monthly payment amount, and once that's done, collections will stop. This is a one-time opportunity. So then we also have loan consolidation, and this process includes converting or combining your loans into a direct consolidation loan, which essentially creates a new loan. And to qualify for this process, you must agree to repay under an income-driven repayment plan or make 3 full on-time monthly payments before consolidating your loan. A couple of notes here. You can consolidate a single loan as long as it's not already a single direct consolidation loan, and a single consolidated loan cannot be reconsolidated. So basically, if you have a one single loan and you fall into default, if it's not consolidated already, you can consolidate it. If it already is a direct consolidation loan, you cannot reconsolidate it. And if you're in default right now, you can call the default resolution group at 1-800-621-3115, and you can get more information on how to get out of default. Okay, so we are going to pass it to Sabrina, and she can talk about additional forms of loan forgiveness.
Thanks, Sabrina Ashley. We have just a few more slides here before we get into our Q&A. We have some really important questions like, where do I go to apply for IDR forgiveness? I've been seeing a bunch of questions here, and so we want to just clarify a few things for folks. But before we get into that, let's jump into the additional forms of loan forgiveness. So there are a few here. I think one of the most popular ones here are actually the total and permanent disability discharge, or TPD. This allows for full forgiveness on your federal student loans if you are totally and permanently disabled. So borrowers are able to provide documentation from either the Veterans Affairs, the Social Security Administration, or you can get sign off from a medical professional to verify that you are eligible for TPD. Now, there used to be a 3-year income monitoring period for TPD to verify that you cannot work as a result of disability, but that no longer exists, which is really helpful for folks. Borrowers can also qualify for TPD if they have a mental or health condition that is expected or has lasted 5 years and is preventing them from getting substantially gainful employment. So if that's something that applies to you, we recommend applying for TPD. Some other forms of forgiveness and discharge include borrower defense to repayment, which is if your school misled you. There's teacher loan forgiveness, which is for teachers teaching at Title I schools for specific subjects, and that's a more limited version of public service loan forgiveness. There's death discharge, where if the borrower, or if you have Parent Plus loans and the child dies, the loan is discharged in death. It does not get passed on to your dependents. There's also closed school discharge, unpaid refund, false certification, and Perkins loans forgiveness. So there are a few options for loan forgiveness. Today, we did not talk about the public service loan forgiveness, but I encourage folks to go to studentaid.gov and learn more if there may be options available to you. Okay, so again, a quick recap. What can folks do right now? Make sure you know who your student loan servicer is and that you have access to your account on their website. We also recommend saving any communications and documentation you've received from your servicer. I know a lot of servicers are sending emails right now about recertification dates, so make sure you keep those dates and those documents on hand, and make sure that you print, download, screenshot, or save any information that details the number of public service loan forgiveness or IDR credits that you have, if applicable. And if you have issues or complaints, we do recommend that folks reach out to their representatives' offices. There are often casework tools that folks can use. Your local and state student loan ombudsman offices, those are folks that are essentially, their job is to help you with your student loans, and they can be that middleman between you and the Department of Education. So we highly recommend that. There's also state AG offices, and you can also go to your servicer's website and contact them. I know it's hard sometimes to get them on the phone, but if they have chat and messaging functions, phone, or even emails, that is always a good approach to filing issues or complaints. And we also want folks to be mindful of debt relief scams. So scams typically involved offering a loan consolidation or debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. Predatory practices include upfront fees, claiming to be the Department of Education, promises of loan forgiveness. Sometimes we'll see bait and switch that may include immediate loan forgiveness and deadline approaching, or debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. Another really big thing, and we've been seeing it a lot, is that folks are getting ads and notices about refinancing. If you refinance your student loans with a private lender, you're going to lose access to all federal student loan benefits and programs because your loan is now becoming a private loan. So public service loan forgiveness goes out the window. If there's any forbearance periods or repayment plans, all of that goes out the window when you refinance your student loan. So just be very careful with that if that's something that you're considering. And if you want to continue getting these updates, you can sign up for our mailing list. You can go to our website at studentdebtcrisis.org, and you can also find us on social media at debtcrisis.org. And tomorrow we're actually going to be doing another webinar, and it's focused on delinquency and default. So for folks who are falling behind on their payments with delinquency, who are struggling financially, or you're in default, we encourage you to join us tomorrow so that you can get more information. And we'll send a list of resources to folks tomorrow via email as well. So keep an eye out for that. But with that, I do want to jump into some of our Q&A here because we're getting a lot of questions. So Sabrina, Ashley, I know we have a list going. Can you fire away with some of the questions that we're seeing?
Sure. This first one is, do I need to consolidate to get out of the SAVE plan?
The answer to that, and this is really important, is no. I'm not sure why this is happening. A lot of servicers are telling folks, or folks are being flagged on studentaid.gov that you need to consolidate in order to enroll in another repayment plan. That is not the case. It's really important for folks to be aware that right now, if you consolidate, you are essentially creating a new loan, and we are in a regulatory period where your entire loan repayment history can be erased through a loan consolidation. That means that if you're almost at 20 years and you decide to consolidate, it could be the case where you have to start over all over again towards the 20 years. And so I don't want folks to make any sudden decisions on consolidation, especially because that could hurt you in the long run. And so definitely be mindful of that. And if for some reason you did apply for a recent consolidation, you can cancel it. There's like a very short window of time that you can cancel a consolidation. So if that was you, just be very cautious about that.
Awesome. This next question is, where is the IDR forgiveness application and how quickly are loans discharged?
So this is one of the biggest questions we get. There is no application for IDR, for income-driven repayment forgiveness. It's a little bit weird. It's not like PSLF where you go through a tool and you indicate you've reached the number of credits. What happens is it's supposed to be alerted on the back end of the Department of Education. They are the ones that are supposed to get a notice on their system and then tell you, okay, you've reached the point of forgiveness. But we all know that it takes a lot longer. It's not quite that simple. But once you do reach the point of loan forgiveness and they notify you, they actually give you about, I think it's between 2 and 3 weeks, because they have to legally, they are required to give you an opt-out period, so that folks who want to opt out of loan forgiveness, who don't want their loans to be forgiven, have a bit of time to make that decision and notify the Department of Education. If you want to have your loan forgiveness, like most folks do, then when you get that notice, you don't have to do anything. You just have to sit tight until that time goes by, and then they would go ahead and discharge your loans.
Thank you. Um, this next question is kind of a follow-up to that. If you have hit that 240, 300 credit mark, do you have to keep paying?
So the answer to that is technically no. So let's say you are at the 240 mark or 300 mark and you're in save and you qualify. But as we were saying, like, you need to get out of save in order to benefit from the upcoming IDR forgiveness. Let's say you get into IBR and you receive a bill, which that's the process here. You can actually apply and request a forbearance or a deferment. If you know without a shadow of a doubt that you are at the 300 mark or the 240 mark, you can request that for that forbearance so that you don't have to continue making payments, but that you're just like waiting at that point for your loans to be discharged. So that is an option to folks. If you've exhausted all of your forbearance periods or deferments, then you will need to make your payments. But if that's not the case, where you haven't exhausted those options, that is another possibility where you can request a forbearance as you're waiting for your loan to be discharged.
Awesome. This next question is, will a processing forbearance count toward IDR credits?
So, as Sabrina Ashley was saying, when you're switching from one repayment plan to another, folks are being placed into a processing forbearance. Now, it was common practice where the Department of Education was granting folks up to 60 days, so two um, credits towards IDR or NPSLF. However, right now that's been pretty unclear, so we do not have a firm answer as to whether or not that's being applied. Um, so I wouldn't count on it, but there is a chance that it's a possibility, but there's no guarantee.
Great. And then this next question, I just have two more questions here. This next question is, did the save plan always not go towards loan forgiveness? So I think,
So yeah,
when
go
did
ahead.
the forbearance start? Because it feels
Yeah,
like
so
forever.
I know it does feel like forever. So if I can recall correctly, I believe that the save forbearance began, I know it was the summer. I think it was June or July of 2024. It was one of those months. I remember it was the summer of last year. So that's when the forbearance began, which essentially like stopped loan forgiveness through SAVE. But prior to that, there was loan forgiveness through SAVE. I know that very few folks benefited, but some did from the low balance borrower provisions. Some folks benefited from the 20 to 25-year provision. So there was some forgiveness, but once Save got caught up in litigation, that's when it essentially was put on hold and the forbearance began. So it has been a long time now for all of us enrolled in Save. I'm also in Save.
Yes. And then this last question has to do with recertification. This person's in the SAVE program and they are wondering, do they have to recertify their income?
So for income recertification, what we've heard is the earliest that someone would need to recertify their income is February 2026 at the earliest. However, if you have Mohila and I believe I don't remember if it was Nelnet or Advantage, has been emailing borrowers that their recertification dates have been pushed back. So I have Mohila and I got a notice that it's been pushed back to 2027. So unless you're being told otherwise, most folks' recertification dates are being pushed back. And the anticipation is that for SAVE, with everything going on, that the recert dates will continue getting pushed back.
Great, thank you. Those are, of course, we have tons of questions in here, but those are the most commonly asked ones.
So let me just take a quick look here. I know there's still a bunch of questions, and I think some of the questions that I've been seeing are we going to have other topics covered? Are we going to have a senior specific topic? We are working on ramping up our workshops in the coming weeks and months. And so you can definitely keep an eye out for our emails. We're going to be ramping up. We started this month and we'll continue down the line. There are some really major changes coming to repayment beginning next year. And so folks should definitely stay connected and up to date on what's going on. A lot of these repayment plans are going to go away, not just SAVE. At some point, we're going to see the income contingent repayment plan and the pay as you earn plan go away. So the options are going to become more limited. And if you are taking on new loans as of July of next year, your options will change completely and become even more limited. So our job and our goal as an organization is to continue keeping folks up to date on what's going on. So we're hoping to reach as many folks as possible, different groups and audiences. And so we'll be doing our best to keep folks up to date. And then as we learn more about the SAFE plan, we'll also make sure to cover that via email and social media. But again, I think that there are many questions here. Again, folks, we hope to continue having these workshops and answering as many questions as possible, but with our small team, it's hard to answer all of them. So I think we're going to go ahead and call it a day. But I really appreciate everyone joining us today, for taking time out of your day to get this information. We will be in contact. Tomorrow we'll be sending a recording of this workshop alongside a list of resources. So keep an eye out for that. Sometimes it ends up going to spam, so check that folder as well. But I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you to my team for being here and presenting and answering so many questions. Just a huge thank you to everyone. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.